Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks very much for holding this hearing. My gratitude as well to the panel. You possess an amazing depth and breadth of expertise in this area, and I'm genuinely grateful that you would share your time here. I just have two questions, if I can get to the second one even, however. I'd like each of you to answer the following, beginning with you, Mr. Lowry. Given that the U.S.'s attempt to dissuade other major economies from joining the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank led by China failed somewhat miserably, what strategy would you recommend that we pursue as a result of that? And I'd like each of you to answer that question, if you would, please.
In terms of the IMF, I think that I agree with most of what John Taylor said in terms of some of the reforms. I think that my own view is that the legislation should be rewritten with conditionality into it, but I don't think that I would hold back the authorization and appropriations while we try to solve the problem that John is trying to get at. I think that that should be part of the conditionality of the legislation, and that the Treasury Department should work on behalf of Congress within the IMF to actually make the types of changes John is talking about. So I think that is the way I would try to approach it, as opposed to taking too unilateral a stance, which obviously in the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank we did and failed.
So if I heard you correctly, you would have Congress pursue that particular avenue of action. I guess the question, given that we haven't been able to do that very well, is absent that, what should we do?
Well, I'm here to say that I think that we, the United States, through the Congress, should be pursuing an action of supporting the IMF. I believe that strongly. I believe that that can be done in a way that's conditioned. I remember sitting in the executive branch going through many conditions on the IMF, the World Bank, and many other different institutions in which we were able to meet the obligations that Congress set upon us. They were not easy, but that doesn't mean we couldn't do it. I think it could be done here.
Professor Taylor?
So I think the reform of the exceptional access framework, the U.S. would not be unilateral here. There is a lot of interest in doing this. As I mentioned in my testimony, the staff and the management of the IMF seem comfortable with it. So it's in a way, its expression is almost a slam dunk for the administration to say this is fine. I don't know what members will do. I'm not part of any negotiation, but this is something that several members seem interested in. It seems to me the administration knows that they have allies. The U.S. is influential anyway in these discussions. I think it could move very quickly.
Ms. Lunsager?
Thank you. I would agree with what Mr. Lowry said, that I would hope Congress could move forward and approve these 2010 reforms, and at the same time continue to work with the administration as they work with the IMF to pursue reforms. I think it'll be a challenge among the membership to come up with an agreement on how to deal with this going forward. And I think one of the difficulties will be, under this new framework the IMF is talking about, IMF, by standing back a bit and limiting its participation, will either be forcing the country into an immediate debt action, when it may not be clear if it's insolvency or illiquidity, and at the same time then looking to bilateral creditors to step up to the plate, to fill up the remaining gap. And then I fear that the next crisis country that comes along will be a key U.S. ally. And then the IMF will be turning to the United States. The United States administration will have to come to Congress and seek the authorization and appropriation for a bilateral support, which, as I recall, has been very difficult even for the very low-income countries such as Liberia or Haiti that we seek to support. But coming up with concessional resources for middle-income countries, I think, would be a real challenge. So I fear that we, the United States, as an official bilateral creditor, might be turned to in a bigger way and more frequently, and at a time when we have our own budget considerations and we're focusing on our other priorities. So I'm not so sure this new framework is going to work out quite so smoothly. Thank you.
To you again, ma'am, I hope an easy yes or no. Nah, it's not, but I'm going to do it anyway. Is there a point at which failure to enact reforms renders it all irrelevant because the fact of the matter is other institutions will have developed over that period of time? How long before we're really in the pinch here because we haven't acted?
I can't really put a time frame on it, but it's clear the BRICS, China are moving ahead in a number of areas, whether it's balance of payments backstops for each other or these infrastructure and BRICS Bank. And then the Chinese are gung-ho on asserting their global leadership. And I'd really think it would be terrible if the U.S. conceded that, when over the years I found, my many years in government, that countries valued United States leadership and valued our participation in the international system and our engagement and our listening and our working out what the solution should be to different problems. And I think we should reassert that leadership by getting these reforms done. Thank you.
Thank you for your forbearance, Mr. Chairman.